Good evening, operations management crew. This is week 6. I'm sorry. Yeah, week 6. And you folks had a break last week because it was Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. I probably gained 30 pounds. Had a house full of company. It turned out pretty well. So I think the little ding where people get invited into the room is a trigger for our dogs around here. They all start barking. I got 2 of them. They want to be right in here barking whenever I start my class every week. So we got 2 relatively small learning blocks tonight, and we'll go ahead and get started with the first one. And it's about performance metrics. And we when we're in charge of something, managing something, we have to know how to measure it to know if we are doing it to a higher quality, if we're maintaining a standard, or if we have some type of an issue. So this chapter kind of goes over some of the roles that you would have in that management position as far as collecting the information you're going to need to understand metrics. So if you went through any of our other classes, this all comes together here, but basically there is a average that you're trying to have in your production. So if you have a bolt that's like a 1/2 inch or a 10 millimeter, and it has to fit on the particular piece of equipment, if it was like a 9 millimeter or an 8 millimeter bolt that you produce instead of the 10, it wouldn't fit. And so there has to be this micro adjustment there that it's still operational as a finished part. So they explain that as a basically an upper level and a lower control level. So if it's anywhere in between, the upper, the most part, as big as it can get, and the lower, the smallest it can get. If it's somewhere in that average, then that machine that's making that nut is operational. Anytime it falls outside of those parameters, then you're developing waste because the bolt that you're making won't work for the process that you're trying to do. So the sooner it's recognized and the sooner that we can stop the machines and cut out the waste, it's going to have to be reworked. The more time and more money you can save your operation. So it depending on what you're looking at, what is being measured for the performance, that's probably more so where you can look at machinery, if it's performing at a peak, or if it's running slower or faster. Your people, the labor, if they're doing the productivity functions of completing something in manufacturing or moving something in the supply chain, and it's higher than the average person can do that, then you have a higher output, a higher performance. But often these things are difficult to measure. And just as an example, you're probably getting invitations somewhere around the next week or the last week of the course to evaluate your experience in your classes. And so here's a chance for you to come back and say, well, I really should have took that in person, or this is my first Zoom class and I felt it was, whatever your experience was with the situation. And that goes into a database where all of the courses that were offered during the semester get the opportunity for students to give us feedback. And that's feedback, I think mine on a scale of 5 over the last 18 years is an average of 4.8. So there's still room for improvement. But if there was one class that I dropped really lower than that, like, barely making above 4 or somewhere in 3 where it was just average, then I go back and I look at that and try to figure out how I can make that more um, fulfilling for the student. And some things are out of my control, like technology or resources that we can put in classes and share online or in this virtual mode. But it also, those averages, the performance measures and the surveys that you put in come out in our annual reviews, like how well we do our job. That's one of the, I think there's 6 or 8 major components that are in there, but teaching is the job. And so how well your students receive your teaching goes a long ways on how they base your performance. So even in a service like education, um, performance is measured, and it's either rewarded or you go in and you try to find ways to improve it if it's not where you want it to be. So those metrics come into play in manufacturing goods and providing some type of service. Look at it as a like a 5-star rating if you were going to order something off of Amazon, or would you buy something that was a 1 or a 2-star? Probably not, because other people were not very satisfied with what they got. So there's several sites my students have told me about. One of them's like Rate Your Professor, and you can actually go professor shopping and look for different folks that are offering classes in your next semester, and find out how other students, what their experience was in their classroom. So I have people that actually come to me from doing the research saying, I had an elective that I wanted to take, and I found that the feedback that you were getting, I could probably do well in your class. So this performance measuring, it's a tool that you use in managing, even if it's not operations, if it's managing people, it's managing a process, it's being able to find out if you're providing the right part or the right service. So this kind of breaks it down to what these characteristics look like. They're reviewed regularly and adjusted by management. So like I said, every semester, you folks get to give some input on the survey, and that feedback comes back to us every semester. And then at least once or twice a year, all the other performance measures that are involved in, being a good professor, those are discussed with our chairs and our deans and the people that support us and that supervise us. So this is one of those characteristics of a strong performance metric. Metrics link to and support higher level function and company-wide strategies and objectives. And so using the IB Tech scenario again, if we have professors that aren't inspiring, or they're not teaching you the first level stuff, like if you're taking like an introduction to something, and then you go into your next level class where it's a little bit more rigid, and you don't have the skill set that you should have picked up in the introductory class. I use my wife for that. She teaches introductory and intermediate and then advanced math. And if the students don't get what they need from that previous class, then they're at a disadvantage when they come into the next level. So they're all linked together, like in your progress to be more educated and be more employable, more valuable. Those skills, if we don't infer the opportunity for you to learn those, then that's a measurable area that needs to be addressed. Metrics link to and support performance strategies and objectives of other functions. And so this could be something about your inventory if we're talking about manufacturing, and having a known that in the past, almost all inventories were ran as a just-in-time type of situation, as to if I'm going to produce 100 starters today for Chevrolet, then I need all the components to put together those 100 starters. I don't need 200 components. I need just enough to make 100 starters. And so that works really well when you don't have to have an inventory that you're not holding on to. You're just going to use it the same day that it comes. Um, but we got into that super lean mode where we didn't have a lot of wasted money in work in progress and the parts that weren't needed. And so when our major supplier, which is mostly it's China, when our major supplier wasn't able to deliver because of COVID and because of uh, shipping congestion and transportation issues, then we couldn't use that particular method. And so the metrics that we had, we were measuring about how well our suppliers got us stuff every day. We had to reinvent the whole operation so that we go to domestic suppliers. You know, we find somebody in Virginia or Tennessee or California that makes those components, and we start doing business with them and getting it on a delivery schedule where we have a warehouse full of the components and we don't have to worry about a train not running or a truck not running. We are starting to do a step back on how we used to do processes where we have an inventory. Yeah, you can hear the dogs in the background. It's like my own fan club here. Individuals or groups are held accountable for achieving performance results. So if you're doing a great job, then this is a way to be promoted and move up to more responsibility. And if you're doing a something that would be a best practice, in other words, you're doing something so well that they want you to show everybody else how to do that particular function to get to a higher standard. That's one of the ways that you're held accountable for doing the job right. And most of the time when I was in charge of some type of a manufacturing or managing even troops or faculty or whatever, I'd always emphasize on the positive because I'd want other people to see that this person like was recognized as doing a above required job, that they were doing an outstanding job, and that they were technically proficient enough that now they are going to show you how to do it like they do it. I found that motivated my employees and my coworkers to want to be the next person that got recognized and that was showing how well they do the job. I didn't need to go down and make somebody who wasn't performing that well feel worse. I mean, that wasn't, that's not how you inspire through leadership. You want to try to take the positive and make other people want to get to that level instead of bringing everybody down when we talk about how bad the performance was for a person. I mean, there's going to be times if it's something that's going to be dangerous or it's harming your reputation of your company or your process is so far out of a line that you're losing money, you're going to have to call those people off aside and have a private conversation with them and try to train them up to where they're doing the job better. But you don't want to bring everybody down. You don't really want that person to be down. You want them to be able to come back. Metrics promote teamwork, continuous improvement, and cross-functional cooperation. And so this is what I keyed in on, is trying to get people, if somebody was struggling, then one of the other professors, like I've done this myself, I've came in and did a guest lecture, or I came in and did a experiment in the classroom. I try to bring stuff to the classroom and have you guys do something hands-on. We have a lab over at the Lawrence campus where you can actually run the operation. If I'm teaching this class, you would be running operations in that lab. It's so if I had somebody that was struggling and they with their lectures and with their hands-on type of stuff, I would say, hey, why don't you invite your class over to the lab and we'll do some type of an experiment in there and let them see how they can improve that process. When you're actually putting your hands on it and seeing that there's a mistake on how things are handled in a non-threatening environment, like our lab has got all the inventory and shelves, and it's got most of the machinery for scanning. We got pick to light. So we can set up a scenario in there where you can see how inventory is stored or moves, or how we respond to different levels of inventory to make it work for our customers. So that promoting teamwork is lifting other people up and then coming up with better ways to do things. More heads are better than one. And this cross-functional, as a business instructor, I did that for 6 years. I started off just teaching management. And then when they found out that I trained recruiters, they wanted me to teach sales. And then when they found out I had a business background on my own, they wanted me to teach customer service and marketing. So this cross-functional, my class roster, the different types of classes I could teach, made me a more versatile professor. So much so that when this supply chain program started back in 2010, I was the guy that they said, "Hey, we need you to head that up, and you've got some versatility. You can help grow that program and create classes and everything to make it work for them." So sometimes it's a curse because you take on more work, but the job satisfaction in seeing a job done well, seeing students graduate, and seeing them come back and offer opportunities to other Ivy Tech students because they're in a position of authority to make hiring decisions. That's where I get my the job satisfaction. We don't get Christmas bonuses. We get graduations and referrals from our previous students. So we got the metrics form a basis of reporting results to executives. And everybody reads the remarks that students make in any of those surveys. Plus, everybody looks at how many students start the class, how many students finish the class, and how many students pass the class. And so there's certain metrics that they look at. One of their biggest ones that they track right now is like we're in the fall semester. And so when it ends in December, in January, they know how many students that were in classes in December came back and started in class in spring in January. And so that's where they put the major focus is, did we have 80% of the students that still needed more classes? Did they come back? Did we have 50%, 40%? And so that retention, that keeping people moving to where they earn their degree, that's job one for most everybody in our chain, all the way up to the president of the college. And it's really because if you invest the time, money, and effort, and you get 3/4 of the way done, you got 20 credits, and you only need like 30 to get your degree, or you got a certificate, or you got 40 credits and you only need 60 to get your associate degree. We try to motivate you to finish it. I mean, they have things where they will, if it's a money situation, they have grants where they can help people pay their tuition. If it's they're not finishing their classes and now they've got a low GPA, they got remedial type of programs where they will have more interaction with that student to help them pick the right classes and look at what their work and their home schedules are to make sure that they don't just take on too much. So yeah, the metric of continuous re-enrollment till you finish, that's probably the biggest gray card Ivy Tech uses. Then we got metrics. Metrics include triggers that indicate when process controls tasks are necessary. And so whether you know it or not, we're in week 6. And on the first week, I had to send up a report saying who didn't show up for class. So that's a no-show. That's our first trigger, is to find out, okay, who didn't show up for the class that they signed up for. And then we have advisors, and I do this myself. I try calling you and I try sending you emails saying, hey, can we get something going here? Can you want to stay? We can get you caught up. And then somewhere around the fourth week, you got midterm grades. And so we can tell how you've been applying yourself so far for the first half. And then this week is the sixth week. We've got like how many people are still active in your class? Did they do anything in the last 2 weeks? And I have to tell if you're participating or not. And so ours was kind of odd because we didn't have class last week. So to say you weren't there last week, nobody was. So it really wasn't a cut and dry kind of determination on your participation. And then, of course, how many people finish the class. They have these triggers at each one of those for every student in every class. So yeah, they know, they can see the big picture on if we're trending down, where we have fewer people that are reaching their educational goals and earning their certifications, or they're having a positive effect on completing their goals and earning their education. So anytime there's a trend that looks like it's headed in the wrong direction, it's all hands on deck to try to figure out how we can turn that around. And the last one here they say is metrics include well-defined plans regarding how to achieve each measure. And usually like if I'm going to stick with Ivy Tech, there's a new employee orientation for our instructors to go through. They go through like classroom management, and they go through how to create a course to build it in this software, Canvas, and how to use the Zoom and different ways to interact with your students. So we give them training, even if they come to us and say, hey, I've taught for the last 15 years ago, fine. We're going to evaluate that and find out if you're teaching, if you're just going to read PowerPoint slides to people, that's not teaching. If you're going to 100% lecture, that's only one way that people learn, is by hearing something. For the most part, the people that are taking classes that are younger than I am, and that's everybody, they're visual learners or they're tactile. They want to learn by doing something. And so very few of you would be satisfied with just lectures. You'd want to be able to do something like some kind of a case or some kind of a experiment, or you'd want to see something. You want to watch a video, or you want to see a chart, have it explained to you, or you'd want to create a chart or a video and explain it to somebody else. Ideally, we get you proficient enough that you can show classmates how to do something, because teaching somebody is the best way to improve the quality of your learning. So the first time I teach a class, I learn every time I teach it. And the last time I taught a class, I learned something while I was teaching it. So ideally, we get you proficient and confident enough that you can teach others, and then you just continue to become more and more proficient and more valuable to yourself, to your community, to your organizations. Okay, so developing performance metrics. I don't remember exactly what's in this activity. I usually go through and review these. This has been a crazy week. I got sick half the time, and I got people around me sick. So let's just take a look at this on our own and see what we think these steps are. And I appreciate, let's see, I go out and I grade SC Pro before we start. And I go out there and grade usually on Monday, Wednesday, and because this class is on Thursday, I'll go out there Thursday and then Saturday. And so if you didn't get credit for, say, finishing your article, it's because I hadn't graded it maybe until today. It was the first time I've seen one person's article. But so if you look at your grades and you're saying, hey, how come I don't have the full points? It's because I have to go out here and pull down your grades. They don't automatically move over. And then I see which one of those modules you finish, and you get credit for it. And then I put it on our grade center. And so this week we had 2 chapters. We got 5 and 6, and there's only 7 that you do for this certification. So we're almost done. We got 1 chapter next week, and we'll do like a review. And we'll also open up the test to take the certification exam next week, and it'll run through the last day of our class. And so you'll have a week that you can go to SC Pro. They're going to send you an invitation. Once I tell them, here's my class, here's who's in it. They want to take the test between next week is what, the 7th of December and the 14th of December. And so anytime, day or night, 24/7, that you want to take that test, you can log into the website that you're invited to, and you take the exam. Officially, I'm your proctor, so you don't have to come to class, and you don't have to come to a test center. You don't have to go out to something like ProctorU. It's a time test. There's 40 questions. You got 90 minutes to do it in, and cheating has never been an issue. I mean, if you've got yourself notes and stuff there, we don't expect you to memorize this whole course. But you can miss up to like 4 questions out of that 40, and you'll still have like 80%. You only need a 70 to earn the certification. So that's coming up next week. That'll be turned on, and then you got the whole last week to do it. Well, let's take a look at this. I think we changed colors if we put them in the right order. The boxes below step through the process of a pharmaceutical distribution company in developing one performance metric to assess other fulfillment accuracy, but they're out of order. Please read each card carefully and drag them to the correct order in which they would occur. When you're done, read through the steps again and understand the full performance metrics. Good luck. So looking at 8 steps, and we just went through those, if you recall, probably lengthily, but this is going to test and see if you understood that. So which one of these will be step number 1? Somebody want to key in and tell me?
As operations manager for a large pharmaceutical distributor.
Okay. Which one is that in front of? It's number 4. So we bring it up there and you get a green tab. So that one's right. What's the next step? Telling you what you're doing, right? You want to try one just to see if it turns green? Somebody give me a step that I could drag up there to 2. Which one is it in front of?
Collaborating with sales.
Okay. So that one is number 6. Let's drag it up and see if it goes green. Yes. And by doing that, we also discovered what the third one was. Your organization determines that you should maintain a 99.3 order fulfillment accuracy. That's pretty good. That's like 1 standard deviation is all you're allowed to be off on that. So we know that number 5's right. So what comes before, after 3 months of data collection and after you determine that your order fulfillment accuracy is off? It's not that one. So it's either to gather data, use inventory management system, your institute a barcode code system, reduce potential human error. It's one of these 2. We'll try this one just for the sake of brevity. And now we know that this next one is a 3 months. So now we're down to you gather data using the inventory management system. After 3 months of data collection, you prepare a report, including graphs showing discrepancies. And this is something that I found out early on as a manager, is executives, they actually, if you do a whole report, there's what they call an executive summary, and it's like a 1-page cliff note of everything that's in that report, because they don't have time to read the whole report. Now they don't even want to read the damn report. Show me a graph that's showing where we are, where we want to be, or what happened, or improvements. They want to see some graphic representation of the situation. And then when you come back, they'll say, let me see last graph I looked at. Okay, now show me what's happening now. So they can make this visual recognition that there's either an improvement or there's not. It is that fast. And it goes back to what kind of learners those managers are. My generation, they were people that had to listen to their professors and their teachers lecture. So we had to become auditory learners because that was the only thing that was out there. There was no internet. I am that old. And so now your generation, in fifth grade, you were doing PowerPoint presentations and showing them how to make graphs and how to import pictures and videos and all that stuff. And so to you, it's like that's elementary communication, is to be able to graphically show me what is going on. And so that's something that when you are going to do, say you've got a proposal for a process improvement, you're going to do all the steps to go out and collect this data like they're talking about in this situation. But when you take it to the next level or to the executives, you're probably going to have just like two graphs saying, here's where we are, here's where we can be, or here's where we were, here's where we are after I made this improvement. That's all the time you get. That's your 5 minutes of fame. And then they'll say, good job, now go fix this other problem. They'll give you something else to do. So we're on step 5. After 3 months of data, you prepare a quarterly report comparing inventory levels, including graphs showing discrepancies and expected inventory. So now analysis shows errors occur in the picking phase is probably the next one, right? So when you're picking it, apparently this place didn't have barcodes on anything. That's very hard to believe, but it could be like an in component. Like we talked about the starters, we're bringing in all the different magnets and the wiring and the casings and all that. And once we put it together, it's not those 85 components, it's now a subcomponent of an engine. So it gets a new barcode number that identifies that part. And so in this case, it could be that they had to get the software to and the labeling and all that stuff to be able to label those starters with a barcode. So if we put that into play, now we can have continuous tracking to determine the impact that those barcodes had and making sure that your fulfillment, like we got it out the door on time, we got 30% is work in progress and 70% is completed. It's got barcodes on it. And so that is kind of showing you what those 8 steps we talked about, what it looks like in a pharmaceutical, even though it became a starter company. Okay. This is kind of reflects back on previous learning blocks. It takes you back to learning block 1, but it's talking about metrics, which is like data collection and finding out if it's in the ballpark, if it's somewhere near average, it's not above the upper limit or it's not below the lower limit. And then it's got categories. And so these categories, some of those can be serious, some of them can be maybe an adjustment, or there could be some that could be a safety hazard. But you're going to take this data and they're going to apply it to find out how it affects the performance in what areas. And so this one is like the different areas of performance that this metric could interact with. And so we got delivery performance. That's mostly your folks in transportation and logistics. Customers' orders are completed and shipped on time. Customer responses to resolutions or times, completion and ready for next workstation. And so if it was bringing raw materials in within an operational environment, there's still going to be work in progress, pallets of parts move from one workstation to the next. Ideally, you have automation and you have some type of a system that conveys that part down to the next one. But depending on what you're making, like if you're working in on an aircraft, there's no assembly line. Everybody is doing different workstations around that aircraft. And so delivery performance could be, did we get this next wiring harness that goes inside this airplane? Was it delivered on time so the technicians could put it in there? And then the next one that's keyed up to come in is hydraulic lines. Did they show up in time so that the technicians could, put all the hydraulic fittings and everything in? So this delivery performance isn't all, it's internal and it's external. Your customers inside the company and then outside. It talks about quality performance. Does anybody know Six Sigma, what the parts per million defects can be? Okay. In your Logistics 201, which is quality and lean management, it explains what a parts per million, how many errors you can have. And the 6 is how many levels of standard deviation are allowed. In other words, there's 6 different levels. If you're at 6, it's 3.4 rejects or screw ups per million. And then you can go to 5 Sigma, and it's somewhere around 250. And then you can go to 4 Sigma, and it's somewhere around 2,500 per million. And so unless you're making pacemakers or you're working on aircraft parts or nuclear repair parts, seldom are you going to, or medical, anything that has to do with life and death type equipment, seldom do you apply 6 Sigma where it's 3.4 parts per million. Most manufacturing environments are at like 4 Sigma, where it's like 250 oopses per million. And that can be caught, when you got 100,000 and you got like 5 or 6 screw ups, they keep it, that's in the upper and lower level of quality, that they'll eat those as a rework. But it's measured in this parts per million, how many of them are defected or not. So first time yields, scrap and rework, customer and survey feedback if you're 5-star or 1-star, service incidents resolved, and then your returns if it was put together wrong. This last week I had a flat, and so I took it in to have the tire repaired, and I buy out, it's just a force of habit. If I got the ability to do it, I try to buy 4 tires at the same time, and then they all wear the same, and it's much better drive and a much better ride. But one of my tires had so many nails in it, they pulled 3 out that day, and there was like 4 or 5 other patches and plugs and stuff in it, that they said, well, this tire is not going to, we can't put it back on the rim legally because it's not repairable. And so I said, well, I think my tires are still under warranty. And they were, but not for road hazards. So that warranty expired in 2 years. And when we had this little siesta where people weren't driving to work for a year, these tires are 4 years old. And so there was no warranty or anything on them, but the mileage was down and all that, to where they were still practically brand new. So I called the manufacturer. I called Honda, who put the tires on, to see if I could get some kind of credit or some kind of a deal. I was giving them feedback from a customer, saying, hey, I understand this is a road hazard that happened, but had I been driving that year or 2 that we were locked up, I'd still have a warranty. Nobody bought it. So I ended up paying for a new tire. It was painful. But that quality and performance that I had from the tires, it wasn't a tires problem. It was where I apparently park my truck or drive my truck to get nails in it. So we got cycle time performance. And if you recall, a cycle time is the amount of time has elapsed to go through a process. And so in supply chain, when we talk about cycle time, it's like, how long does it take to do a replenishment? In other words, somebody just took the last can of beans off the shelf or out of the warehouse. how long does it take for that truck to show up, unload it, put those beans back on a pallet on the shelf to be able to replenish that slot where there's more beans. And so they try to get that cycle time down to hours, not days or weeks or months. And in the manufacturing environment, that cycle time could be how long it takes to go from one workstation to the next. And if there's a mistake on workstation 1 when it shows up at workstation 2, the cycle time is still running while they go back and they rework that part to make it useful. So it's important because labor is tied to that, your machine hours, how much wear and tear you got on your machine, how much product you're using as far as raw materials to make that part that now has to be remade. So that's what they use to multiply it by, the cycle time. Changeover time, and we might have discussed this earlier about if I've got a 10 millimeter bolt, that's the size of a nut or a bolt. And as this starter is moving down the process, there's smaller screws that actually screw the whole housing together. They're like a 4 millimeter bolt. So the equipment that does all the torquing, let's say it's the same type of equipment at the beginning that has the 10-inch is the same type at the end. They have to change either the adjustments to make it tighten up the smaller bolts, or they have to have two machines. And most of the time, you're going to have two machines, but if it's a smaller setup, you may have to have downtime to set up that last station with the same machines and put a different size bit or a different size nut to drive in the new the smaller pieces. And that setup time, that is non-production. That's not, you're not making anything. And so that is a cost that goes into the non-labor side. And that's where you have to really get this down to like you're working at NASCAR and you're trying to put the spare tires and fill it up and everything in like 10 seconds, and then you're back in the race. That's how changeovers and repairs are in a manufacturing environment. They got a team that's learned how to do it the most efficient way, the quickest way, and they do things on a preventive maintenance. So they say, okay, we've used this drill bit 5,000 times and it needs to be sharpened or it needs to be replaced because the hole is getting harder to make or it's getting too big. So they preventively schedule after every 5,000 times this machine, this automation makes the hole for the maintenance to be done to replace the drill bits on. And then there isn't a breakdown that costs money, and the changeover is a lot quicker than a repair. So when we got, and that brings your equipment readiness up too when you're doing the preventative part. Safety performance. This one is the number and severity of overall accidents and incidents. Yeah, this is an area that has to be like the most important area, because when we're talking about safety, we're not talking about a machine breaking down. We're talking about something that has interacted with an employee and one of your people are injured or down. And so the severity level, you know, if there has to be a doctor involved, if they had to leave the premises and go seek medical attention, there's a severity level for that. If they're gone for 24 hours, there's another level that checks into. If there's an extended absence, like where they actually have some type of short-term disability, that accident gets classified as a higher level. And so what kind of effect do you think that has when you got this severity where you've got somebody that's on a disability, they're out that long? What kind of effect does that have on the manufacturing operations? Okay. One of my best operators had got blindsided by it because a machine was moving toward them and he had their back to him and he was struck by the machine. The person had a forklift and he had a bunch of scrap metal on it, and he couldn't see in front of him. He didn't know that there was a person standing in front of him when he drove the machine into that person. And the steel struck the person in the back and in the back of the head. They were out for 130 or 40 days. And so that person was the best operator that they had for like 5 or 6 of their very uh, tedious type machines that had to have special training to be able to operate them. And with that person out, that bottlenecked everything coming to that machine, usually because people were trying to learn to do it as well as that operator that was off sick or off recuperating. Stuff had to be reworked or it was done a lot slower. And so not only did you harm this person to where they couldn't come back to work, but you crippled your operation. There's another bad thing that came of that is the rating for your insurance went up because there wasn't a safety protocol for moving scrap metal, where it's low enough. You never stack it too high where the operator can't see in front of them. That protocol wasn't in place. And so this person had been doing it that way for a long time. And until they corrected that protocol to show that, no, that accident like that will never happen again, because now they can't raise the forks more than 3 inches and they can't stack it more than 2 feet so that there's plenty of field of vision when they're operating that forklift with a load. And so that one falls under this regulatory noncompliance, because there's all types of operating manuals and stuff for operating forklifts, and none of them say load it up so much that you can't see out past your load. So that safety performance, I think that if you come into an environment where people don't feel safe, then their productivity is not on their mind. They're not thinking about how to improve things or how to do things to their best of their ability. They're ducking and watching to make sure they leave work with all their appendages. So safety has to be job one. It has to be the most important, highest priority. And if you go into a situation as a manager and you check your safety standing and find out that you really do need to have a more robust safety team or safety training, safety inspections, that should be your first focus. Your first week on the job should be there, because you can turn it around just once people see that, okay, now they're looking out for my health. I can maybe give them a little bit more of my productivity. And this last one is cost performance. And this is where they're talking about labor versus non-labor, or production versus non-production. Like when they are waiting for parts, when the equipment goes down, all of those things go into the simple math of to make one starter is supposed to take 20 man hours, 20 people, 30 minutes a piece will be 40 people. But it's supposed to take 20 man hours, and it's supposed to operate off of these 5 machines, and it's supposed to be done within 40 minutes from start to finish. Anytime there is a difference in that, then the starter costs more money. And so here is the one that they always overlook, the last one on here for cost performance: training hours per employee. So if I've stopped you from doing something, like on production, operating machine or something, and I say, hey, I want to bring you over here and show you, train you on this process. I want to evaluate safety procedures. I want to show you how to make a quicker adjustment to the machine changeover. Any of that training, it's not creating a starter. It's a extra cost because I'm paying this person to be at work. It's labor hours, and I pulled them off of the production to train them. And so what I find the next most important thing after safety is training. What I find is if a operation is suffering in their productivity, or they're having people that are having accidents, all this stuff, I look at their training and say, okay, what kind of training does a person receive when they start? And when they are assigned an area, a process, when they're working in a machine or something, what kind of training do they have there? And then what kind of ongoing training, like in safety, how to work as a team, how to communicate, how to stop the line if you see something that's unsafe. There's sustained training where they want to go back and make sure you still remember how to do things. And then there's ongoing training where they're trying to make you a more productive employee. And they tend to cut corners here to save money and to save man hours by not investing the hours that each employee needs to be proficient. On the big pie of 100% of how much it costs to make something, you can't even see the little line that's on there for training. It's not even a slither of the pie. It's like 0.0014. So of an hour, that's what, about 3 minutes that they put into training on that process. So it's a place that they have to invest if they want to be long-term successful. So we have a summary of all the stuff that we went over in chapter 5 there. Okay. We're an hour into it, and here's your quiz and the study guide that's digitally available to you out on the discussion board. If you wanted to come by either the Lawrence campus or the Plainfield campus, I can print these out and give them to you in a booklet form. But it's only about, I think it's only, because there's only 7 chapters and then the terms, I think it's only about 15 pages if you decide you want to print it and then have something that you can make notes on, and to have a resource when you get ready to take your exam, you got that resource that you can quickly go back to. But I would be glad to print that for you, and you can pick it up either on Tuesdays at Lawrence or Wednesdays at Plainfield. That's the 2 times I'm out in the community. I think I still have time to mail them. It's 2 weeks, so if you want me to mail it to you, just give me your home address and I'll print that out and have it put in the mail to you. So you got your 7 practice questions that are going to be, it's the actual questions on these that are going to be on the exam. The feedback that I've got from students, and I've been in the room with them, with the whole class, they take it on campus, the whole class came to campus and took it, is that there wasn't any trick questions. The questions that are in these exams, these practice questions, are the ones that are on the actual certification. So if you're acquainted with these 10 questions for each of those chapters, and you went out and you took that practice exam for the 8 common modes, learning modes, and then the 7 learning modes for the course, you're in good shape. Whatever you score on that one is extra credit. I think there's 40 points you get for the common and 70 points for the operations one. So that's 110 extra credit points you get for taking those. But the big payoff to you is however you do on those is how you're going to do on the actual exam. So you want to try to get as close to 100% as you can. You can take it as often as you want. There's no time limit on those practice ones that are out there for extra credit. But you want to get it down to where you feel more comfortable and less stressed when you set for the exam. You'll be fine. Okay, so we want to go on over to 6. And this one kind of is, I thought I was deja vu here, excuse me. This week in our transportation course, which is going on over in Plainfield, and there's a couple that are going on online, we had technology. And because supply chain overlaps, the different disciplines interact so much that they have kind of the same language and very similar functions in a lot of areas. One of those areas is technology. So we don't have anything that is just used in the warehouse or just used in transportation or just used in procurement. It's the same technology that's used all through the supply chain. And so I was thinking, I think I just taught this. And I did. I taught it to the transportation class. And so those of you that have had the transportation class, this is kind of going to be almost like a reminder of that course, because we touch on the same principal areas about technology. So the role of technology. I can tell you that the previous historically how manufacturing and how supply chains and operations work was all paper. And so things can get lost when a paper is somehow supposed to be attached to it, even if it's a sticker that's stuck to something, that can get some type of oil or stain on it, and you can't make out, it wouldn't be legible. So and then whatever you write on the paper, if I'm hand jamming, like there's 25 nuts and bolts in this box, somebody may not be able to read my writing, or maybe I miscounted them. It's human error. There's a whole lot of opportunity there for unreliability. It takes a lot more time, and then human error. It wasn't a very clean operation. Let's just say it that way. But once computers came about, and that was probably around 1985, 86, we started seeing a lot more computers out there. By the time the 90s came around, supply chain had taken full advantage of how to use computers to automate a lot of their processes. And so the spreadsheets you see in Excel and all that, they're still used in how we do operations and how we do procurement, how we order things, supply inventory for everything that's in the chain, mileage, distance, all that stuff is kept on spreadsheets. And it may have some type of a fancy overlay that's got a truck moving around or something. But when you go all the way, drill it down to what's happening in that automation, it's a spreadsheet, and it's keeping track of the math. So having that done, it takes a lot of the effort, the human error effort of doing the math, and it's legible, so everybody can see what's happening. And because we're not isolated, each one of these different steps, like within the supply chain, it talks about it here on the next page, I believe. We're not isolated. And so this e-commerce, what year was that? I'm showing my age again. It was probably 1999. Was basically the first year that Amazon offered anything other than books. And the king of the internet was eBay, where you could go out and you could put stuff up for sale, or you could buy stuff. eBay was Amazon in 1999. And so places like Sears are like, oh, that's just a drop in the bucket. It's a flash. People never will buy all their stuff from a picture. They'll want to come into a store and they'll want to feel it and touch it and drive it, try it on. So Walmart thought the same thing. And so Sears, which all the way back into the early 1800s was the dominant retailer. They had the Sears catalog, and when they were expanding out to the west, the railroad, as far as it went, you could get a Sears catalog and order a stove or axe or something you needed out in your log cabin land or something. But Sears was the main retailer for over 100 years. And when this e-commerce started up, where people were starting to look at things online and saying, hey, I think I'll try to sell here, and maybe I want to buy something from somebody in Brazil and have them mail it to me. Sears the light didn't go on for them. They said, oh, that'll never happen. So you folks know now that I think it was 2004, they started reporting how much people did their Black Friday and how much money they were spending online versus in a retail environment, a storefront. And it was like 5% the first year report. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot of money people are trusting to put out their credit card and all this stuff online. And over the last, I'm thinking last 3 to 5 years, it's flipped where now there's like 80 and 90% of all Black Friday purchases are done sitting at a desk or on your phone. It's done on the internet. And there's not people out there breaking their neck to be the first one in the door to buy something at a retail site. So time changes because people get confident with systems. And this is what this whole section here is talking about, is once we got it figured out that we could securely have electronic commerce, we could take your order and it'd be a digital order. And so it was instant. It wasn't waiting in line for a cash register or anything. It was instant. And then we wouldn't have to take our stock or our product and put it at Walmart and wait for somebody to buy it. We could manufacture it and it's in our warehouse. We have control of our inventory. And then when somebody wants it, it leaves our inventory and it goes directly to the customer. We cut out all the middle expenses and there's a higher margin of profit. The people are more satisfied because they're getting something at a discounted cost. And they are getting access to a whole lot more items than they would going down an aisle at Sears. And so even Walmart with its huge mass stores still doesn't have everything. And so if I needed something, say, I don't know, for a special lure to go fishing for walleye in Canada, I can't buy that at Walmart. And so I go online to Cabela's or one of the Bass Pro Shops or something. I find that one little shiny 3-inch wiggly blue fish thing, and I ordered it. So that's the things that we as customers are more savvy. We can go out and search and find, and we can compare prices, and we can see how much it costs to have it sent to us, which if you haven't noticed, that is something that's really changing. Free delivery is a thing of the past. Unless you buy a big bulk of something, you know, in excess of hundreds of dollars, what used to come as free delivery, now you're paying whatever it costs to send it to you. My wife's got a new vehicle. She wanted a truck like I'm driving, and there's a bed cover, a tonneau cover I want to get for it, but I'm not paying $300 to have it delivered. I just can't do it. I've just got spoiled with, I'm going to give you $1,000 for this, and you're going to charge me 300 more to bring it to me. I call BS. And so I sent him a note saying, hey, you can give me free delivery. I'll buy it tomorrow, but I'm going to keep shopping around until I find somebody to give me a better deal on delivery. I may have to end up biting it because it's an odd shaped truck, and you just can't go get a bed cover or a tonneau cover just anywhere. It's custom made for that particular truck. So I may be stuck paying for that, but I won't be happy. So we got internet, e-commerce, and then one of the great things about e-commerce is, say when you're leaving Walmart and you get home and you find out, oh man, they didn't give me the right price on this particular item. It's supposed to have been a 20% discount. Or I forgot a bag at Walmart. And I do this still. I forgot one of my bags at Walmart. I got to go drive back out there, and hopefully customer service or somebody can say that, yeah, this cashier brought it over to us. But most of the time they go, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. And whatever you had at the self-checkout got restocked. Well, with e-commerce, if I order something, it's exactly what I'm paying for, supposedly. And when it comes to me, I can say, hey, I didn't get what I ordered. Then they will either give me credit immediately or they will send the item that wasn't there. I might have mentioned to you is that I got heating lamps for my hens that were sent to me. And inside that box with the heating lamp, I'm trying to remember if it was oil. I think I ordered filters and oil to do the oil change on my truck. They put them all in the same box. And so the filter and the oil was sloshing around on the trip to my house. And when I opened it up, the two heating lamps, they're pretty expensive too. They're like $10 a piece. They were just dust. They were shattered. The glass was everywhere inside the box. And so I tell Amazon. I said, hey, I took a picture of it. I said, the light bulbs didn't make the trip. They got crushed by the other stuff that was packed with it. And they said, okay, we'll just send them back to us and we'll give you credit to your account. I go, you want me to send you crushed light bulbs? Well, that's the only way we can give you credit. I'm going to spend postage. I mean, you're going to spend postage, return postage to get a crushed light bulb. So I finally had to go like another level up. I said, can I speak to somebody, else? And they put like a problem manager, a problem solver, I guess is the next level. And I said, look, I'm just trying to save you guys return postage. This is a crushed light bulb. Here's a picture of it. And you sent it in a box that had oil and filters in it. So I'd like to have the light bulbs, but if you want them sent back to you, so be it. But I don't know what you do with them. I can just dispose of them properly. And the guy was very happy that I made that effort to bring it to his attention. And I got like, I don't know, a $10 gift card besides the light bulbs they sent to me. So having this feedback with the customers back through e-commerce to the manufacturer or to the wholesaler is a added benefit in customer service. So this one's a fun one. They want us to figure out if it's a process or if it's information on which one of these different goodies here. And I think this is one of those that's pretty fun, is you can drag them over there and then it'll tell you what is right and what's wrong. So if we just pull them over, we can kind of get them lined up with whichever one they were. I'm just pulling them up, I'm dragging them and dropping them. But like Wi-Fi, that's probably information, I'm going to guess. 3D printers, that's might be a process. A die cutter is a process. Spreadsheet software, that's probably not a process, but I'm going to put it there. Okay, so when I check the answers, it was a process. It tells me which ones are right or wrong. So then I can change them around and reset the wrong ones. It'll let me bring those back in. I think this one went there. And this one went there. So it says 3D printers are part of a process, die cutters, and that's what actually, like if you got a mold that's going to make a part, it's the stuff that cuts out the mold. Spreadsheet software, like I said, it's the backbone to every kind of, it's the spread. There's a spreadsheet behind this exercise here. Electronic points of sale, and it's given PayPal as an example there. But information comes from two-way radios, PA systems, Wi-Fi, and file sharing sites like these cloud resources. So there was our exercise. This is kind of a reflection of what you're going to get in almost every supply chain course. And it's talking about enterprise resource planning. And that's the software that connects all the different processes in the supply chain together. So through ERP, when I get I request, I'm in procurement, so I'm going to go buy raw materials. So my folks in finance know I just obligated us money to buy metal and wood and plastic, whatever I need for raw materials. And then when it's going to be coming in, the information for delivery of that comes back to the system. This ERP is everybody can come up to the terminal and say, okay, when is that wood and that plastic and the metal coming in? And there'll be a expected delivery that's on there from our supplier. And so we can set up to have people on that door, that dock or whatever, to unload the stuff to take it right to where that process needs those particular resources. And then once they're in-house, they become part of the inventory for raw materials, and that gets updated in the ERP. And so now I'm in charge of manufacturing bookshelves or whatever, and I know that I have enough raw materials to actually make 100 of them or 1,000 of them, and I put in the order to make 100 cases. And so now all the machines and everything that are involved in that process and the operators all come online, and the raw materials are moved to the first workstation and they create this bookshelf. And so the ERP gets information from each one of those machines. And so I can come up as the operations manager or the salesperson. I can say, hey, how many bookcases we got in the system? And it'll tell me, those machines tell as they complete each step. I've got 30 complete ones ready for packaging. I got 25 that are work in progress at station 1. I got 10 that are at station 2. So you can get a live real-time update in what's happening on manufacturing those bookshelves. And so then the person who's trying to sell them can be making contacts with their customers saying, hey, I can have 100 of those on the truck headed your way today. And so the whole process, and then the customer has access to the ERP, and they can say, well, how are you doing that? You only have 80 of them that are made. So he said, by the end of the day, we'll have your 100, and then you'll see the transport ticket that's going to tell you when to expect it and when it's going to be there. And so having all this, everybody having the same picture, it's like it takes a lot of the confusion out. It takes a lot of duplication of effort out. It gives us a real-time number on how much money do we have in this process, how many people are working in, how many are on the schedule, how much money are we going to make by close of business when we close this sale to this customer? Are we at a negative, or are we balanced, or what's going on here? And that's real time, every minute on the minute. But most of the time they run it at the end of the day, then they'll run it at the end of the week, end of the month, end of the quarter, and they can look at trends on whether their productivity and their profits are headed the right way, or if they got machines that are kind of failing them now, they've aged out. Normally you get about 3 to 5 years on a machine, and you start counting on how many days it's going to be before you replace that with a new machine. But all that stuff gets fed into this enterprise resource planning. And so I can make decisions as the operations manager on what phase or what next step I want to do. And the customer service people can access it, the sales people, the maintenance people, everybody can see what's happening in the process. So there's some things that they do to try to make items goof proof, idiot proof, people proof. And the military, we used to call it to make it private proof. And they call that a polka yoke. If there's a machine, or there's some kind of a step, or some kind of a switch, or some kind of a form that's put into operation to make sure that you don't do something wrong or you don't hurt yourself. And a lot of the processes, they got tag in, tag out. They got a key that you got to go unlock something to power it on. And so there's physically a key that you have to retrieve to get access to the on switch to make sure before that happens, you're clear of this machine that you're turning on. But there's an example they show here is this bottling, and that's a bottle. So I don't know how old that picture is, but it's a Coca-Cola bottling company. And if the bottle gets overfilled, they have a shutoff valve, a switch there that will stop the soda from overfilling. And so it fills it up to the right level before it puts the cap on. One of the things I'm having some dental work done, and my dentist made a casting of my dental work that has to be done. And so he made this implement, and it cost me like $800. So I said, well, I want to keep it. When you get done, I want to show them what a polka yoke is. And if you look at this implement, it fits right over my the casting they made. And so I'm getting implants. They're like I've had a tooth that failed. I went through COVID and lost 2 teeth. I don't know if it was the shot or it was the virus or what, but I usually have pretty good dental health, but I lost 2 teeth, and they were right by each other. And so this process that he made, this poka yoke goes in my mouth when I went into the dentist, and it has these two metal guides that are made into this plastic form. And when they drill down, the drill goes in straight. It only goes one way because they made those guides, and it drills down to where they're going to put what looks like drywall, those screws that have the threads, and you put it in and they expand out. They're going to put that type of a uh, implement into my jawbone, and then they put bone around it to let it grow over. So to make sure that the teeth they're going to put in there, these implants, these permanent teeth, are straight, they made this poka yoke so that he didn't drill it at an angle, or he didn't get it off centered, and he didn't get in the way of the second tooth that they're going to do at the same time. And so that, I think I paid $800 for that. It's a little extra step in the process, but their success rate is a lot better when they have these improved implements. So when they're monitoring the condition, this keeps that from being a situation where they drill too deep, or they drill in the wrong place, or I get part of my mouth cut where they were not supposed to be drilling. It takes all of that all those mistakes are taken out of the equation when they have this poka yoke that monitors the process to make sure it goes right. So this computer aided design, that's been a real resource that saved a lot of time and money. They basically can draw out a schematic of 3D representation of a part or what have you. And before, say if I wanted to build a house, and I put down the foundation, I'd put the walls up, and then I'd put in plumbing. And when I start to put in sinks and stuff like that, I just find out that I have to drill through one of the major foundation joists that could weaken the structure of the floor. And so if I have this CAD, first thing I do is I put in all the plumbing, all the electricity, all the appliances and everything, and they're on there. And then I can put where I design where the walls go, where the major joists and everything are after that. And so I didn't waste money, time, resources making that mistake. If I've got this computer aided design, I can make changes to it. So we designed to build a house, and we wanted to have a garage that was 30-foot long, that had doors on both ends, where I could bring my boat in and drive all the way through and park it where it was ready to hook up to and pull out at the other end. And they'd never done that before. I guess nobody ever had a boat, or nobody didn't like turning a 30-foot boat around. But they had to go into a CAD. They had a system on that and show what kind of a driveway I would need to make that turn to make the straight approach into the garage, and then what kind of joists and supports I would need for that part of the house to have two doors instead of a wall back there, which was mostly in the design for garages. I could put load bearing and stress on that. They had to redesign how that weight was taking over the top of both of those garage doors. So I got to see that in real life, what kind of a asset that is. And it also told me how much I was going to have to pay for it because of the changes in design and everything, and the hours that they did for CAD. I got billed for that too. But still, had I been there building that house and said, oh, I want to have two doors on this garage, I would have been in a world of hurt, because about 50 steps back, when they were putting the main supports and the foundations in, they would have made some different decisions to accommodate that opening for that second door. So it's the same in manufacturing. This helps solve problems. And if we got a process that's going and we want to expand it, we can figure out where would be the best place to put the machine, that would the newest machine, or where would be the right direction to bring the raw materials in, and how many steps do we want to have between machines for the operators to be safe and all that kind of stuff. It's all done through this computer aided design in a 3D type of simulation that can put all that together. So when people were designing where am I going to put a warehouse and all that stuff, a lot of money gets spent. And then they find out that that's not going to work because they didn't have a CAD that told where the major roads were, where the airport was. They didn't have the whole recipe for handling inventory coming to and from that warehouse. And it might have been a perfect warehouse, but nobody wants to rent it or use it because it's isolated and there's extra cost to handle it, the stuff a longer distance than and have to stick with one mode of transportation. They just lose a lot of money not having this ideal design simulation thing to see if it's going to work beforehand. So all of those steps that we talked about, like for making the starter, every one of those machines are connected to the process, to this integrated computer. And so it won't start a second part until that first part is finished and it's sent over to the machine to be part of the assembly. So then it'll start a second part if they haven't met the number of assemblies for that day. So it's at part number 99 and they only want to do 100. The machine knows it's got one more part and then it doesn't start another process. And so the time and the effort and the avoiding waste and overproduction, all of that comes into play because of this computer integrated manufacturing. And we have a 3D printer in our possession in our lab. And if you didn't know this, the NASA program was the first ones to use the 3D printer in space to make parts. And so if you ever watched that old show, I think it was Apollo 13 or 9, where they get up there and their filters fail and they're suffocating, and they come up with tape and foil and stuff, and they make a new box that holds square filters instead of the round ones. And so they got somebody on the ground that's saying, well, try this, and you've got this much tape and this much aluminum foil or insulation, and you got these filters that fit. They had the lunar module thing that landed on the moon, and then they had the orbiting module. They each had a different size. One had a square filter, one had a round filter. So they figured out in their design flaws, they should have the same type of filters in the future. But to avoid that happening, now their missions have these state-of-the-art 3D printers. Any part they need, they have that part in the computer database that they can I need a computer motherboard to replace the one for satellite imagery. They select that part and it makes it exactly to specs, that part to replace it. So this is becoming a reality where in supply chain, we used to order parts. Now that the cost of 3D printing is coming down to where you're almost going to have one on every desk, just like a printer or a monitor, the cost of the technologies come down, that parts manufacturers are a little bit worried that you won't need us to make 10,000 components for a starter. You can tell 15 3D printers to make your parts and then assemble the printer or the starter. You would have everything you need at one location. You wouldn't have to necessarily have a supplier or a warehouse or anything. And so this technology is going to have a major effect on how people deal with suppliers and how they, if I'm short one part, I would go ahead and use the 3D printer to make that part because it's something that's that vital that it has to be there. This reminds me of a friend that his parents owned a machine shop in Frankfort, Indiana, right outside of the Frito-Lay manufacturing. Frito-Lay he was such a great machinist that they built him a machine shop in their parking lot. And so they wanted to be able to just walk outside and say, hey, I need this or I need that. And one of the parts that he had, machines he had in there, Frito-Lay helped finance it and get it to him, was one of these type of 3D printers. It was a couple generations back, but you could load metal or anything. It would make a metal part, not just plastic. And they had this, and I think you can still buy them. It's like a Cheetos that looks like the orange cheetah's paw. You know, it has like 3 toes on it. It looks like a paw. He helped design the fitting that goes on the end of the machine that squirts the batter into the oil or the furnace. I think they don't fry them. They cook them through heat though. And so it doesn't just like spit out this gob that looks like a paw. There's like 56 moving parts on the end of this injector, and it's about the size of an ink can. And it opens up, and there's an air pressure, an air pocket that will spray 3 of these paws out. And then there's a second air pocket that puts the batter and pulls them together. And then there's a knife or whatever that closes it off, and it's sharp, and it drops that one little chip gets blown into the shape of a paw, and it gets dropped into the heating mechanism. The batter gets cooked. So it was supposedly a promotional thing, and people really liked them, and so they kept making them. But each one of those, when they went down, they'd wear out. He was charging them $6,000 to fix a new one. And he had a machine that he let me see how it worked. It basically, he had one of these taken apart. He put all the components on this shelf, and he'd enter in what he wanted that made of. If it was like the thickness of like 0.001 brass or stainless steel or whatever, he would program in what he wanted that part made of. And they would take the original and it'd go underwater. It was sort of a oil bath kind of a setup. And there was another platform that the stuff was magnetically pulled to, and they had like a cutting torch that was over there, and it made a duplicate of that, all the components of one of those. And that was in probably like 2000 when that technology was around. So it's ancient. It's 22 years old. But it was $6,000 is what that time it took. It was something like, I don't know, 10 minutes to make one of those. That was the operating cost of that machine, was the $6,000. And so even though Frito-Lay owned the machine, he was the person operating it, and he was the person handing them a new nozzle to make the paws like in 10 minutes. So they were completely happy paying him $60,000 or $6,000 per hit. But that's kind of how that was the genesis of how these 3D printers and the technology to be able to make a repair part or and this is intricate, it had small springs and hinges and everything in it, to where the downtime on that line was reduced, because they had like 8 or 10 spares that the operators would put that new injector in, and they say, hey, take this out the parking lot, get this reworked. And they didn't have any downtime because of how quick they could replace that nozzle by creating a new one. So what's happening out there now, I haven't been in the process in a couple of years, but it's probably mind-blowing, the technology that they have that can create parts out of just a program running with all the components that are there available to it. So we look at automation, and this is basically used to reduce labor. So if you want to kind of in your head, what's the difference between the technologies? It's most of the people that get injured in our line of work are lifting boxes or they're operating a forklift and they drive off of a dock. You know, they're caught between the trailer and the dock. Very dangerous in some areas there. So this is talking about reducing the danger by replacing that human labor that's could be repetitious. They're doing the same thing over and over. Your muscles and your joints and everything, they can be damaged because you keep doing the same movement over and over, like assembling something. Repetitious motion is what they call that injury. And so if a machine can be designed to do that, they can keep going. They'll just replace like a bearing or a joint or something on a mechanical arm, a robotic arm, instead of you doing it. And when it comes to moving stuff in dangerous areas, they have these automated platforms that are the size of a pallet that pick the pallet up and they take it anywhere that it needs to go. So the automation basically is to try to design to take the injuries and the unsafe type exposure that employees have out of the equation. And so we see a lot of them that are unmanned, but there are some of these like pallet movers that will have an operator that moves the pallets, but they don't have to be on each one of them. They could be a whole train of them. And for the most part, if it's a robot that's like in the automotive industry where they're painting the cars with robots so that nobody's in there getting the paint particles in their lungs. If they're picking up an engine block to put the components, the pistons and the camshaft, crankshaft, rods, bearings, all the components of that engine together by a robot doing that, they get the exact same torsion, tension. The installation is exactly at the right angle, all that stuff. It reduces the chance of human error. And the human doesn't get tired because that robot's holding up this 300-pound block with all those components in it. Whereas a person wouldn't be able to do it. They'd have to hoist it up on a chain and be under it some way to try to put it together. So automation has made life better for us because it's removed a lot of the risk and the machines don't get tired. There's this fear that machines are going to take our place in employment. And just from what I see evolving with advanced manufacturing and with robotics, our sister disciplines at Ivy Tech, there is always going to be a need for a human to operate or repair or to tune up any type of robots or machines that we have out there. So it's basically taking the heavy lifting off of you, and we're going to retrain our workforce to be able to be the people who provide maintenance or support or programming and all that to operate the robots. So the robots can't do that on their own. We have to still have interaction with them to be able to do that. But the heavy labor, the lifting and the turning and the repetitious, we're getting pulled back away from that because, face it, that's not a very desirable job. And these warehouses can't get people to move their product because it's strenuous work. And it needs to be 24/7 because there's always a demand for whatever's in that warehouse. So people like to have time off. They like to sleep. They like to have some holidays with their families. And that's where automation can step in and make it a more tolerable or more pleasant work environment. Because we can't outsource supply chain. We tried that with China making all of our stuff and bringing it to the shores, and then we pick it up. It didn't work out. So we're going to see a trend where most of the supply chains are going to be domestic, and we're going to be resources will be here. We won't have to depend on an ally or somebody that may not be happy with us at the time, giving us components for medication and things like that. Like what happened with the pandemic. We couldn't even make our own medicine. So we don't want to ever be in that situation again. Talks about conveyors. Again, this is taking the lifting away. And it's saying that in Memphis, I guess they're talking about FedEx, yeah, that there are miles of these conveyors that take a box that comes in off of a plane, and it'll take it through their sorting uh, facility to the section where the trucks are being loaded. And through technology where it scans, they have like a halo that's over the top of the conveyor. When the box comes through and they scan the label, they know that this is coming in from Memphis, from Michigan or whatever, and it's headed to Indianapolis. And so it will take it to an outbound door or plane, you know, if it's going to fly again, that it's going to bring it closer to Indianapolis. So those conveyors keep people from having to carry boxes and move them around, and it gets them to the right place. So it takes the human error out about, well, where is this supposed to go? Door number 5, 6, 7, where does it go? All of that's on the automation on the label. And here we touching base on robotics. And again, it's big in automotive. And it's taking that repetitious motion out of the workplace. And for the most part, there's either a welder arm or there is a tightening arm. You know, there's some type of a socket or a wrench or something at the end of that. Or it's got drill bits. I've seen them that had like about 50 different drill bits on it. And so it would turn if there was a drill hole that needed to be made for whatever size was needed there. But it has this component to be able to lift heavier and the ability to repetitiously do that same thing 24/7. And so you don't want that job anyway. So let the robots have that. And then we got, I think we got the emerging technologies. It talked a little bit of, I kind of skipped ahead about the 3D printing and Frito-Lay to cover that. It's just amazing. Ours that we have in our lab has 3 different sizes of plastic. And so you have like a real thin one that does final detail, and you got some thicker ones that'll get the base or the major size of whatever you're trying to create. And I think we have 30 downtown in our labs for advanced manufacturing. And during the pandemic, they made those shields, the face shields for the nurses and the doctors, and they had like a little green strap on them that went on like glasses, and it had Ivy Tech on it. And we had those machines running 24/7 to supply any hospital, any facility that had medical people in it, or anybody that wanted a shield. The state gave us funding to run those machines 24 hours a day. And our students that were in that program came in and set all that stuff up, and they were getting extra credit and getting paid to do this project to help the state out. We export a lot of those to other states too, but we made a ton of them. But you know, the 3D printing, that is the wave of the future. Now, this one is something that Ivy Tech had to adopt here not too long ago. I'm thinking about 4 years ago is when we were able to actually see stuff on a phone. You can have a website, and the original ones were sort of like PowerPoint slides. And so you could like go to the next page, it'd be the next slide of a PowerPoint. It basically had the same type of a software background on it. And inside each one of those slides, you could insert things like video, or you could have a form that you filled out, or you could have a link that would take you somewhere where you could pay for something. So rudimentary, it was sort of like a PowerPoint show. And so when we have these other devices that aren't a full screen, I mean, I'm an old guy, so I've got like a 28-inch screen on one and like a 36 or 42-inch on my monitors here. They're big as my TVs because I got several. And so if I'm grading, I can have one of my monitors open. I'm looking at you on our page that we're sharing. But over here, I've got 2 other monitors that I can actually get stuff ready to drag over to you like that. But having the ability to resize the responsive web design was something that just came around for us in Ivy Tech about 4 years ago. So now you can have an iPad, or you can have a smaller um, notebook like they have in the high schools. Those Chromebooks are a little bit smaller than a laptop. And then you got your phone. And I've asked people, I haven't asked you guys this, but I asked them, how many of you are taking this class just using your phone? Can we get a quick response on that? Is anybody still out there? How many of you are just using the phone, or do you have other technology that you're taking the class with?
I'm using a laptop.
Okay.
Yeah, I use my laptop.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it with the phone, but I there's usually one or two in each class say, yeah, I just use my phone. How in the world can you see those slides, and how in the world can you take those tests and stuff just on that little? But if it works for them, they widen it out and they can't read it or something. Uh, but it really shows up when it comes to the writing parts. This week we had the article review due, and I can usually tell if somebody's trying to do a writing assignment using their phone, because the phone is used to you texting, and I get textees. I get the letter U, and I get the letter R, and I get the LOLs or whatever, all the different texting jargon shows up in a research paper. And so I do feel for them if it's, that's all they have. They can't get access while off campus. But on campus, there's computer labs free to use on every floor. And there are Lona laptops. If yours goes down during your stay with us at Ivy Tech, you can actually be issued a laptop, operational, same as the faculty use. And as long as you're a student, you use the laptop when you get ready to graduate. Depending on how long you've had it, they're talking about just letting you keep them. But if you graduate, you just turn it back in. So we understand that having access to the right technology is important to be able to do these courses. Cloud technologies, that's oh man, the money that you can save now with this. As a private business owner, I wanted to have some kind of a payroll software, where I could write checks and I could track time and expenses and all that. Well, to buy it, I think it was for like 10 employees. To buy the software, you had to buy the licensing, and so for each person that was going to have access to it, I think it was somewhere around $11,000. And they were saying, this is dirt cheap, jump on it. And so fast forward to when the cloud became a real thing, and I can pay $1 a month per employee, because that cloud has got the software operating from a third party. And when I enter my stuff into it, I'm sharing, there's 10,000 people that are using that same application. I'm just using it for my 8 or 10 and my business. I don't have to have something specifically for me. I can use something that's offered by a third party and pay for use. And Ivy Tech's going through something now where I think we had you folks in Gmail, and you're probably getting notifications that, hey, we're moving over to Outlook. So the deal we had with our mail service in Gmail was an improvement to what we had before, but Outlook is giving us a whole lot better deal per person that uses it. And the reason that we're in this Canvas, that you're actually taking your classes through Canvas, is we had Blackboard for like 15 years. That was how we taught our courses. And Ivy Tech had 135 students enrolled taking classes, and Blackboard crashed. It could not handle that many users. And so we had to go to another vendor and say, hey, we're such a large college. What can you do for us? We want to have everybody in the college on the same learning platform. And that's how we came into Canvas. And so far, it hasn't had any major hiccups. I mean, I like Blackboard and I was very familiar with it. I was kind of, oh, disgruntled, grumpy old man for a couple of months because I had to take all my classes and rewrite them to put them into a Canvas format. But once we got rolling, I think this is like our 6th semester with Canvas. It's much preferred to Blackboard. Blackboard didn't have any way for our people with iPhones to access their grades or anything, and Canvas is kind of tailored for that. So cloud technology makes it all affordable because you can use it as eaches. Each time you use it, you pay for a percentage instead of buying a whole licensing program. And it talks about how CAD software works through the cloud, and 3D printing, all that stuff can go through the cloud to get the technology where you need it. So rolling this up, it was basically talking about how we've got more proficient. We've taken out a lot of the waste and the expense. The human error is the big thing that we've been able to improve on since we've got more technically savvy, and the advancements just keep rolling. They're talking about electric cars, electric trains, electric trucks, all that stuff. And technology is what's going to make that happen. Right now, we don't have the technology to make batteries that are going to be useful in moving large amounts or weights distances. So if the battery for a semi weighs more than the payload, and that's where we're at right now, truck can haul 80,000 pounds, and the battery to make something that has enough torque to pull a trailer is going to weigh about 60,000 pounds. So that means that truck can only pull 20,000 more pounds than the weight of the battery. So until technology and we find some Tony Stark type of new element that's going to make these batteries more proficient, we're still going to be using some type of fossil fuel to move trains and move trucks. But in your lifetime, all that's going to change. So you'll be at the cutting edge of that technology. So we covered our last two for tonight, and we want to just take a quick glimpse at next week. I think I can go back to content, or I should be able to fast forward through this. You got your quiz, and again, you're going to see those same questions when you take it for real. So the last one is maintenance and quality, and that one is a very fun one. And then it talks about the different types of maintenance and the task involved in it. And TQM and TPM, those are the new and improved ways that you manage people and you manage things. So that's important to get into that. And then we've got like a review, which is that if you've been out to our class, see if I can pull that over. It's taking those review exams. Make sure I don't have, let's see, let's go down to modules. Here we go. And I'll drag this over. So we look at mod 4 done, mod 5, we're out for Thanksgiving. This was what we did tonight. So next week, we've got this maintenance and quality. And then I want you to go out and take a look at this practice quiz. So this is the one for the Common Core. There's 40 points you can earn that are all extra credit. And if you feel like you're ahead because you only have one chapter and you got that review, then go ahead and take that, look at that. I've got one here. Where did it go? Let me make sure it's out there. The practice test for operations management. We want you to be able to take that one too. So one of them only covers 4 chapters. The other one covers the other 7. I'm going to figure out where it went. And then week 8, you got that one final problem that's due where you come up with a problem. And I have 2 students that did that, and they did a great job coming up with a personal problem and coming up with alternatives to how they were going to solve that problem. And then they tell me which one they're trying to see if it's going to work. You don't have to solve the problem for that assignment. You just have to show me how you identified a problem and you did the research on what different types of alternatives there could be to solve it. And then you want to decide on which one to try. If it doesn't solve it, that doesn't mean that you didn't do the assignment. It just means that now you understand how to do critical thinking for problem solving. That's what the assignment's about. And then your feedback about the course, that gets you some points. So next week really is our last meeting. When we come into week 8, I'm just looking for assignments to be turned in and for you to take this time period from 5:30 to 8:20. I'm going to be on the air, but you don't need to come out to take your exam. And so you can take it anytime before then, but I'd like for you to have it done by the 15th of December. So when I get off of the air tonight, I'm going to send a notice to SC Pro saying, here's the students that are finishing block 7 next week. I'd like for the test to be open now in case they finish it ahead of time. And then that you have from now until the 15th, you got 14 days to go out and take your exam. I want you to feel confident when you go in there that you're going to pass it. So take these practice exams. But if there's some wacky reason, 40 questions, 90 minutes, that you don't pass it, I think you got to get a 31 or higher out of the 40. Then you can retake it. It costs $25. So somebody in the transportation class 3 or 4 semesters ago did that. They retook it and they were fine when they did it the second time. But there's really, if you take advantage of these practice tests, there's no reason you wouldn't pass it the first time. So I'm going to figure out where that assignment went to. It should have been right there. It's worth 70 points. And I'll make sure that that's in there for you. Okay, I'll drop that in there. So 1, 2, 3 people still owe me their article, and only have 1 person has turned their problem in. So if you could give that some attention, that's your 2 major assignments. And then, of course, taking the final for your certification. Does everybody know how to get to their certification once they pass it? Let's go out to SC Pro. Let's see, here it is. So when you log in here to this first site, there should be a toolbar up here that talks about your account. Is this it? Your profile. Your profile will have that certification added to it, but let's open up our class to see if you can see it better from there. Let's see. Class list, content, grades. I believe you're going to be sent to, is it here? I believe you're going to be sent from the test site. It's going to automatically send you your certificate when you pass it. They're pretty nice. You want to make sure you add that to your LinkedIn profile, your resume, because it's a nationally recognized certification. It's a certification in manufacturing and service operations. And so whether you end up in something in manufacturing or in the service industry, this is showing that you have working knowledge about the operations management part of it. And this one is for transportation if you decide to take that one. And Chris this semester is teaching the supply chain management one. So we're taking 3 certifications from this one certifying entity, and we're offering those to our students. Any questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.